Hey guys, welcome to the second workshop of the Network State Hackathon, co-hosted by Matchbox and Mask. Well, with us is Henry from Stockware, and he's going to give us a quick intro on Stockware and maybe some of the backstory of how it went into what it is today. I guess for new listeners, maybe I need to also give a quick intro on this hackathon. So let me quickly share screen of of the official website. So can you guys see my screen? As you can see, this hackathon, we have the name the network state. What it means is that we are indeed building a network state off of the blockchain that we are currently playing with. But we have a dedicated focus on both social and on-chain gaming. In that we feel like in order to build the network state, it has to be filled with some content. And we feel like games and social network are essential to the flourishing of this network state. So essentially, Matchbox is providing the on-chain gaming part, and Musk. If you guys don't know, we are a top tier Web3 social project and has been working on a lot of the social both applications and protocols. So together we are hosting this hackathon, and hopefully we can build the network state together. Onto a few of the essential information. This hackathon starts today and extends beyond to February 20th. For project submission, it's gonna end on the 17th. For prizes, we have I think 50,000 in total, including for the gold price, we're sitting at 20K, and we have category prize for best Web3 games, best Web3 social projects, and best infra and general tech projects. For additional stuff, we do have incubation and grants coming after this hackathon. We're also giving out mentorships and exposure to a wide range of resources. I've already briefly talked about Matchbox and Mask and Stockware here. We were going to have Henry to talk about Stockware. For judges, we just had Henry is from the Stockware team. Janek just had the talk half an hour ago. I'm here. Yoni is the founder of Matchbox. And where we're going to have the rest of the list, most of the list, coming up also as workshop speaker and also as judges. For partners, that's the judging list is pretty comprehensive in terms of representing the partners and sponsors. So as you can see, for infra and the general tech partners, we have Stockware, we have Argent, we have Copas on the security side. For gaming, it's mostly the familiar ones. Topology, he's going to give a speech tomorrow. Lutron, I'm also a huge Lutron fan. Brick, Silvix is going to talk on I think Monday. What else? Next ID is a product from a protocol from Musk. Web3MQ is going to talk in an hour. We're also going to have Stocknet ID, Freakoven. I think his talk is going to be tomorrow. We also have a wide range support from various developer community. Thanks to Fellows, thanks to the Ming podcast, thanks to Build Up. A bunch of them are contributing a lot to.
Hey, how's it going? I'm fine, thanks. Yeah. Actually, I wanted to update on that. Tell me.
What's going on? I think I might need to
It
mute.
looks like somebody is talking to somebody else in the background.
Yes, I just muted him. So, well, my part is mostly done. Let me see if I
exactly,
have a,
exactly.
well, yeah,
Meaning
it's
that
the bottom
whatever
of
is there, I have the talk,
the
it was
official
fine, and they
website,
add me in
and I
a
guess
Telegram
everyone
group
here already have a
with
brief
their dev,
understanding
which
of
was in Italy at the moment, so he
how
couldn't
this
join the
hackathon is
call.
organized.
And I actually
I
currently
guess I'll
writing right
give
now
the
because
floor
he asked me
to
a
Henry
couple of
to talk
questions, and it
about
seems
downside.
cool. And he's just
Hey,
write
hey,
me
can you hear me?
if I want to
Yes,
take
loud and
kind
clear.
of that
Nice.
of what
Very
does it mean?
cool.
He's explaining me
And
what's
can you
going to be
now
the
see
job
my
right
screen?
now,
Should you see
and
a
he's asking me if
presentation
I
that
want
says
to
why are
like
people
to
excited about ZK
participate, and
rollups and
he told me
StarkNet
that
in particular?
no, I mean, but I'm just writing on Telegram. That's why I
Yes,
didn't
I
have
can see
any
your screen.
exact update,
Let me
because
turn off
it
my.
seems going forward kind of quickly, because they also
All
told
right,
me
should I
that
start?
it would be a kind of
Yes.
probatory month, like
All
one, I
right,
don't know,
cool.
not I don't know if
So today
it's
I'm
a month or
gonna
what time, but
present all of you with
a
a
probatory
presentation
time or something like
which
that.
goal
But that's
it
nice. I
is
mean, I think
to basically give
that's
you
not an
a quick
issue.
introduction
And
as
but I
to
haven't just
why StarkNet
I'm
is
just
useful,
talking
what
to
it
him
is,
right
and how
now.
it can be
So,
useful when you're developing
but
an
it seems
application.
going
It's a
fairly well, if
general
I have to be
high-level
honest, considering
presentation,
my experience
and
I had in the past year about
I
interviews
won't go
or
into the details on how to
having good
set up your
feelings, let's
environment.
say.
Though,
But
let me know if
let
this
me
is
just
something
see
you're
what's
interested
happening in the next
in.
hours,
Feel free
and
to
I
interrupt me
will
if you have any questions
get you back with
in
a
the
more detailed
middle of
update.
my presentation. All right, so let's start. Why are people excited about ZK rollups and StarkNet in particular?
Oh, well, they
Let's
asked me more
start
on
with
presenting
the
myself,
basics.
and if I was
Why
able
StarkNet?
to.
Why
We have
ZK
been talking
rollup?
about what we were going to do, like the
ZK rollups in
GMX,
general, StarkNet in
what they
particular,
want to
answer
work,
to a specific necessity
and then they
and to a
asked me in
specific
general more if
paradox,
I
which
was
is the
able
blockchain
to
paradox.
work
When you think
autonomously,
about it,
and
Bitcoin
about a
is
limited
almost 15 years
supervision,
old.
in
It will
those
turn
terms,
15
and if I
next
was
year.
comfortable with
Ethereum is
protocol which
almost
has
8 years
kind
old.
of big
Um,
size.
both of these tech
Big
are
size in
not
terms of repo.
very, very
And
new.
then I
And
also
in the
pointed to
in the interval where
this
they
dev
have been
in the
used,
chat.
we
I
have
also
seen the
point, they
rise
asked me
of
to point him to
enormous
some
payment networks
specific
such
part
as
of the code that
Visa,
I've written
Alipay.
that I
Banks
think
have
that it's
scaled up a
relevant
lot.
to
So,
show what I
and none
can
of
do
these
or what's my
banking network
experience
or
on these
payment
kind of
network
things. And
are
that's
using the
exactly what
blockchain,
I
right?
did
Why
yesterday.
is that?
So
How
he
come?
has been
And they're
checking,
able to
and now he
process
asked me if
much
I have
more
experience
transactions
in
than
other
Bitcoin and
part
Ethereum.
of Web3,
How
I would
come?
say.
These, like,
And
banks
I'm
and service
currently
providers
still
are
have to
using
answer in
technology that
Telegram
is
because I just
way
wrote him
older
five
than
minutes
Bitcoin
ago.
and Ethereum. Why is it so
That's
slow?
it.
And it all boils down to the way trust is distributed in such systems. In a in the legacy world, in your banking
No,
network,
right now, no. I
um,
had the.
trust
It looks nice. I had a good feeling with them.
delegated,
Their
meaning
style of work,
that
their kind
you
of
we
way of working.
expect
It seems
specific
very, very
players
nice, and the fact
to
that they also
maintain
want to
the
have
state of
this
the
kind
system
of
and make
probatory
sure
period,
that
that looks
everything
also
is
fair to
correct
me because
with the
we don't
who
know each
holds what.
other, and they didn't ask me
This
to do
has
any
some
tests
benefits, but it
regarding these
has
kind
also
of things.
some.
So
One of the benefits is that
it looks
these
nice.
people
If
can throw
I
huge
would say
machines
that
into the
it might
mix
be
and process a
a
lot
deal
of transactions. Right?
if
Visa can
this
operate
next
data centers and
conversation goes on.
service
But
millions
I
of
have a good
customers.
feeling in terms of talking
The
with
downside
them.
to
And
that
plus,
is,
one of those is
there's a
Italian,
lot of
at least.
downsides to that, and I'm not
So
going to
it
get
was
into
also
why
nice,
blockchains are cool, but one thing you need to realize is that
for me,
um,
it's Italian.
blockchains
But
on the other end
yeah, and
manage
yeah.
trust
So I would
differently.
say
Trust is not delegated, it is inclusive, right? Meaning that every participant
it
of the
seems that they
network
are
has the
interested,
capacity
and
and to
I'm
a certain
interested
degree
too.
the
So hopefully
responsibility
we
to
can
maintain
get to
a common
an
state of the
agreement
system
or whatever.
and verify that
Exactly, but
everything
I don't
is
know. We're
happening
just
correctly.
talking. So just
So
let
in
me
one case, we have inclusive
terminate this call, and
accountability, and the other,
during
we have exclusive
this
the
hour or
accountability.
whatever,
So
I
in
think
exclusive
I will be
accountability,
able
only one
to
person
give
is in
you a
charge of
more
the network.
detailed feedback about what
Inclusive,
happened.
everyone is in charge of the
It's
network.
happening quite fast, actually.
The downside with inclusive accountability is that you lose two main stuff. You lose scalability and privacy. You lose scalability because if you want everybody to be able to audit your system, past and present, it means that you're inherently limited by the capacity of the machine of the smallest person you
Oh, cool, cool, exactly. Let's see.
to be able to validate your blockchain. It means your whole blockchain network has to be processable by a retail machine. And this severely constrains how much computing you can do on your network, right? So you lose scalability and you lose privacy, because in the second case on the right here, if people all do the same thing and verify the same transactions, then tool allows a person A, Alice, to run a program and to send the output of the program as well as a proof of execution to a person B. Let's call him Bob, right? With the proof of execution and the output of the program of Alice, Bob is able to execute another program called the verifier. And with the verifier, Bob can have mathematical certainty that Alice ran the program correctly and that the output she gave to Bob is the correct one. In other words, he doesn't have to re-execute the same program in order to reach the same conclusion as Alice. And where the magic really kicks in is that it is exponentially cheaper to execute the verification than the computation itself. In other words, there's an asymmetry between Bob and Alice. Alice can execute a very big payload, and Bob will only verify it, and this will be much cheaper for him. But he will benefit from the processing power of Alice, and he won't have to trust Alice, the person. He just has to know that the math is correct. All right, I hope that makes sense. Now, let's go to the next question, right? So you have in your mind what is a provable program, right? It's a program of which, when you execute it, can generate a proof for correct execution. Now, what is Starknet? Starknet is basically a layer 2 for Ethereum. It's a general computation platform secured by Ethereum. It's basically a network kind of like Ethereum that lives on the side to Ethereum. It also has blocks. It also has transactions. It also has nodes. And Starknet allows you to write smart contracts, right? So you can deploy your contract at addresses, you can interact with them, they have functions and stuff like that. Now, the cool thing with Starknet is that it has a lower cost of execution than Ethereum, and that it the more you have transactions, the cheaper they get, right? So Starknet is a blockchain network that lives side by side with Ethereum. Now, another component in this is Cairo. And what Cairo is a general purpose programming language that allows you to write provable programs, right? So you remember earlier when I mentioned provable programs, it turns out you can't prove the execution of just any program. You have to use a specific you have to use specific programming languages. And Cairo is the leader in that aspect. Cairo is the biggest, most widely used provable programming language. So you can execute a Cairo program, you can write a Cairo program, execute it, and then prove that you executed your program correctly. Pretty cool, right? And the cool thing is, the verifier I mentioned earlier, the program that verifies the proof and the output, you can actually code an Ethereum smart contract to be a verifier of such programs. Okay? So now, when you combine both, StarkNet, the network I just mentioned earlier, is a Cairo program. StarkNet is the operating system for the L2 I mentioned earlier that processes transactions and smart contract. And the execution of StarkNet is basically the process of aggregating transactions, executing smart contracts written in Cairo, and putting all of these in blocks. And you can prove the transition from block 0 to block 100. You can generate a proof that your network was executed correctly and your network moved forward correctly without invalid state transitions, without people stealing your money, right? And so the really cool thing with StarkNet is that it's not just a network that is on the side to Ethereum, it's a network whose state transitions is maintained on the side and is provable to Ethereum. Now, the cool thing I mentioned earlier is that StarkNet is very powerful. Why is it powerful? Why can you afford to do more complex transactions on StarkNet than on Ethereum? Well, it boils down to the problem we had earlier. Remember, you can't do a lot of complex transactions on current blockchain networks because everyone has to redo the same work and everyone redoes the same computations. Well, on StarkNet, you can afford to have players that run very big machines, right? That execute payload for everyone and execute smart contracts, complete smart contracts, and prove that they executed these correctly. And this proof gets sent to Ethereum every once in a while. So that's the reason StarkNet scales better than L1 networks. It's because it allows specialization of players, and it allows specific players to use very big machine to produce outputs that everyone with a simple machine can verify, right? You can think of it as for what mining is to proof of work blockchain. Mining is to security what provable program is to execution. When a miner produces a block with a lot of difficulty to mine it, you can verify that it is his work correctly without having to re-executing the same work he just executed, right? You can just verify that he did the mining correctly. Well, here you can think of it the same way with execution. You can verify the output of processing thousands and thousands of transactions, and you can take just the state of the new block without having to re-execute all the transactions. Okay? So in a nutshell, that's what StarkNet is and and how it works and why ZK rollups are necessary. All right, don't hesitate if there are questions. I was a bit fast on this presentation, so I hope. Oh, wait. So I hope this makes sense. Now, I want to get into a little bit why this is interesting and what kind of thing this can enable. And I'm going to cover 5 topics. There are a lot more things this can enable, but I'm going to cover these 5, and then you can see what you like and use during this hackathon. So we mentioned this briefly earlier, but what having a divergence between people who aggregate blocks and people who verify them enables is cheap computation. since you have a network of players that can specialize, you can expect them to have very big computers to execute a lot of computation. So code execution becomes much cheaper. This actually goes into two directions. A lot of the time people think about ZK rollups in terms of, oh, my transactions are going to be super cheap, this is great. But you can kind of think of it along two axes. One is the number of transactions and the other is transaction complexity. You can do more of the same or you can do more complex stuff. It's kind of like, you can say Ethereum is a bread toaster. So it allows you to bake bread, like maybe 2 slices of bread. And Starknet is like a oven. It's much bigger, much more expensive to operate, but you get to toast a lot more bread at the same time. Or you can bake cake or chicken or clay pottery, whatever you want. You can do a lot more stuff with the oven than you can with a bread toaster. And here it's kind of the same thing. You have more computing power at your fingertip. So what can you do with that? And so there are a lot of people exploring that. We see a lot of people playing with this in the gaming vertical. So I want to mention Brick, Topology, or Influence, who are all building games on Starknet, and there are a lot of others. And here the typical example is if I ask you to create a battle game like, say, Worms 2, if I ask you to build today on Ethereum, what are you going to be able to do? Basically going to be able to say, okay, maybe I'll keep, I use an ERC721 to keep characters, I'll use an ERC20 to count points, but that's about it, right? You have no way to calculate the ballistics of projectiles and the impact on the map in a smart contract. It would cost you too much money. Well, computation being cheap on ZK rollups allows you to do that. So you can put your actual gameplay on chain. So that's really cool. Another thing you can do is to have verifiable neural network execution. There's a lot of talks about, AI and the blockchain, and a lot of time these are pipe dreams or things that don't really make sense. It's hard to figure out the intersection of both. Well, this is the intersection of both. You can actually have neural network which outputs can be verified on chain. That's really an interesting concept, and you have a bunch of people doing this kind of stuff. A very interesting aspect is, on-chain generative art. What can you do with art when you have a lot more computing power to generate your assets? All right, so that's cheap computation. Now, another interesting aspect of Starknet, it's not entirely linked to Starknet being a ZK rollup, but more to Starknet being a state-of-the-art modern network, is that we get the benefits of account abstraction. Account abstraction is essentially a fancy name for moving the validation of transaction from the network responsibility to the VM responsibility. Think about it this way. Well, on Ethereum, when you send a transaction, your transaction is first verified by nodes. It will verify that the signature of your transaction is correct. And this is done in your node client, right? And once that verification is passed, your transaction is executed inside the VM. So you have one piece of code that is outside the EVM and another that is inside the EVM. Account abstraction is basically having verification of transactions happen inside the VM. So now instead of having a transaction that is verified by the network and then sent into the VM, your transaction is sent straight into the VM, verified there, and then passed along. Okay? Another way of looking at it is that every account on Starknet is a smart contract wallet. All right? The authentication of transaction is done by the smart contract wallet and not by the network. Okay, so that sounds simple, but what can you do with that, really? Well, here we have two main players doing wallets for Starknet, Argent and Bravos, Argent X and Bravos. But I want to cite also Ledger, who are doing Ledger Fresh, as well as a cartridge who are doing game controllers for the blockchain. And here there's a lot of room for experimentation. One is to see, one is to have basically easy onboarding for users with no gas. We have a game live on Starknet. It's called Rules, and what they do is basically they have a game that people can play on their smartphone. They are doing transactions on Starknet. It's fully non-custodial, but they don't have to pay for gas fees. Why? Because the operators of the game pay the fees for their users while being self-custodial. So that's pretty cool. Another thing for gaming you can do is session keys, so basically delegating the signing power to a specific entity for the times you're playing, right? You can have safer key management. You can have basically a lot of improvement as to what the UX of the blockchain is, both in terms of security and in terms of usability. So you can go in a lot of directions with that. Okay, so that's the second thing people care about for Starknet and look at on Starknet. So account abstraction. Now the third thing you can do with blockchain with Starknet, which is really valuable, is having a trustless bridge. So when we think about bridges in the blockchain world, most of the time we're thinking about bridges where you bridge assets, right? You bridge an ERC20 to another chain, you bridge an NFT to another chain. But the truth is, this is very limited. You can do a lot more stuff with the blockchain than just moving assets. So why can't you do this with a bridge? Why can't you send data? The answer is you can if you design your bridge correctly, and Starknet's bridge is designed this way. It allows you to send the data from L2 to L1, and as such, it enables you to have your L2 application be an extension of your L1 application. It allows you to really enrich your L1 protocol with your L2 instance. The other really important thing about the Starknet bridge is that it's secured by mathematics and not by validators, meaning that whenever a message goes through Starknet and to Ethereum, it's not a validator saying, yes, this is what happened. Trust me, I have something at stake. It's pure mathematics being sent from Starknet to Ethereum. And that's very powerful. When you think about it, blockchains in general can't talk well with each other. They can't understand each other. There's no way for Ethereum to know what happened in Bitcoin, right? They have to ask a human what happened in Bitcoin and then assume that this human is telling them the truth. Well, validity proofs are really, to the best of my knowledge, the only instance of blockchains talking with each other. Basically, a blockchain that is able to understand something that happened on the other blockchain without needing a human to say, yes, this is what happened, with a mathematical tool, a pure computational tool in the middle. And that's really powerful. So what can you do with that? Well, you have various teams such as Aave, Maker, who are experimenting what they can do with this bridge, and both of them are experimenting with what I said earlier. So using L2 as an extension to their L1 application, more than just using L2 as a copy paste to their application. Another thing you can do for gaming or for NFTs is to basically have the minting process happen on L2 so that you can onboard your users for cheap, and then have the asset live on L1, so you can mint an L1 asset from L2 very cheaply. Another thing you can do is have your application live on L1, but have its governance happen on L2, where it's nice and cheap to execute such things. All right. So that's the third thing. Now the fourth thing is storage proofs. storage proof are a very niche concept, but a very powerful one, and they're an extension to what I mentioned earlier. So remember when I said that validity proofs are really the only instance where blockchains get to talk to each other natively? Well, if you extend that a little bit, it means that any blockchain, you can prove what happened on it to another blockchain at any given point in time. And this is what storage proof is. It's essentially CRISPR-Cas9 for the blockchain world. It basically allows a person to prove that on a specific chain at a given block height, this is what happened and this is what is part of the state. So you can basically copy paste state from an application on chain A to Starknet. And that's a really powerful concept. It allows you to, for example, steal the user base of somebody else or distribute resources to specific users of a specific app on a specific chain. So who's doing what there? So the biggest users of storage proof right now are Snapshot as well as Herodotus. I need to change the logo here. And the kind of stuff you can do is gasless voting on L2 for L1 assets. You can do stuff like atomic swap. You can do a lot of really interesting things that are just not possible on L1. Okay, so this is number 4. Now number 5 is fractal scaling. This is another really interesting concept that is opened up by ZK Rollup. And it stems from this basic postulate or this basic concept that is recursion. So you remember when I explained earlier that Alice executes a program and generates a proof, and then Bob verifies that proof, right? He runs a program called the verifier and verifies that proof. Well, what happened? And you remember that Cairo is a general purpose programming language. So it means you can likely write a verifier program in Cairo. Now, what happens if Bob, instead of just verifying the program, generates a proof that he verified the program? Well, this means that Bob is able to generate a second proof that is even smaller than the first one, and you can recursively grind down the size of proof. Or actually, you can use it in a lot of different directions. But the basic concept of recursion is generating a proof that you verified a proof, right? So what the kind of stuff you can do with that is really mind-boggling. That's why we call it fractal scaling, meaning you can take it in a lot of direction. So you can augment throughput because you can now batch into the same amount of proof, you can batch a lot more computation. The other thing you can do is you can reduce latency. You can use this in order to have your network speed up a lot. Third thing you can do is run your own L3. You can run your own Starknet and settle it on public Starknet. Or you can run your own app chain and run it on public Starknet. You can also imagine having stuff like generating proof client-side for your customers if you want to have a privacy application and verify these on-chain. Personally, I think this area of exploration is really interesting. You can do a lot of things with that. So it's really exciting to see what people come up with. All right. So these were the 5 kind of applications that I wanted to talk to you about today when we talk about Starknet. So remember, Starknet is a ZK rollup. You can prove the correct execution of Starknet, and there are a lot of things you can do with cheap computation power. All right, so now the question becomes, where do I start? Where do you go from there? Well, if you want to get into Cairo, and Starknet, the first step would be, I would say, to go to this repo, which is Cairo 101. Let's take a look. Can you still see my screen? Can you see the URL I'm typing in or not? Or do you still see the presentation?
We can see the URL and the GitHub screen.
Very nice. So see, I would strongly encourage you to check this tutorial. This tutorial is basically a simple set of exercises that will guide you through what the syntax of Cairo is. So see, for example, if you click on exercise 1, there's a bunch of code and I want you to read that code and understand what it does. What it does is fairly simple. You have a function that is called claim points, and you have here two functions, validate exercise and distribute points. Your goal is to be able to execute the function that distributes points to you. That's it, right? So this one is very simple, right? There's a constructor, there are some variables here. You just need to call this function and you'll get points. So how do you do that? You can open here the contract on StarkScan. You can go here to write contract, call claim points. I'm going to connect with Bravos, right? Up. And I'm going to, connect my wallet to Bravos and then call claim points. Ah, it doesn't like this. Let's see. Need to connect my wallet. Interestingly, it doesn't like this. Let's see if this works with Voyager. And Bravos doesn't want me to connect. So I'm gonna try with Argent X. Argent X up. I need to connect. I'm gonna connect here. Oh, I wanna go to my testnet accounts. I'm gonna use this one. If I call transactions here, and here it says the transaction, it will fail. And the transaction will fail because I already used that, I already did that transaction. So, okay, this is a bad example because I need to, I've already validated this exercise. But basically, going back to the tutorial, each exercise will explore a specific function of the Cairo language, right? So this one will show you how you use storage vars and how you use view functions. All you need to do is read the exercises and figure out how to get points. Here in that case, you see this function as a parameter basically requires you to find what the secret value here in storage and then send it. The good thing with this tutorial is that it will walk you through how to read Cairo smart contract. It will walk you through how to use explorers and how to and basically it will also make you create an account on Starknet and do all this kind of stuff. What's happening? Upgrading my account. Here I have a transaction pending. All right, so that's the first exercise you can do to get started on Starknet. Now, we have a bunch of tutorial, and once you're done with that one, probably you'll figure out, I want to do a bit more complex stuff. So I don't know how much all of you here are familiar with what an ERC20 is, but if you are familiar with ERC20, maybe this tutorial will be a bit too much for you. If you're not familiar with ERC20, this is a good starting point because it will both teach you what an ERC20 is and how it works in the context of Starknet. So the concept with that exercise, basically for you to write and deploy an ERC20, and then we have a smart contract deploy on Starknet called the evaluator. And the evaluator will basically run a series of tests against your contract to make sure that your contract works correctly. So in a nutshell, it's a way for you to get automatic feedback immediately on the work you're doing. As soon as you validate an exercise, you get points that show up in your wallet. You can see that you don't see them right here, but probably I can add them here. Right. Up. I want to see this one. And you can see here that I have some points. So this is validation that I did some exercise correctly. And see, for every exercise you do, you will get extra points. All right. So I highly encourage you to go on the github.com/starknet-edu and explore all the repositories we have. For Starknet Cairo 101, we have something on ERC20s, something on ERC721. If you're interested in account abstraction, this tutorial is also really good. We have one exploring the bridge. So take a look at all of this and see what works for you. Pick some resources, and this is the best way to get into Starknet. Second thing you should do is go on our Discord and ask for a technical question there. There's always somebody willing to answer you, and it's today the best way to get information on Starknet. Now, as far as programming environments go, I would strongly suggest you go with Protostar. It's here. Protostar is a state-of-the-art tooling for Starknet. You can install it in a very simple command line, and it is and it's really cool. It's really good. It's easy to install, and it will get you set up in no time. So that would be my go-to for how to get started on Starknet. So I hope this introduction was useful. Yeah, and basically we still have a few more minutes, so I'm happy to answer questions if there are any. I know you have a big program after that, and so I know you have a lot of teachers coming. But if you want to ask some question, now is a good time to do so.
Yeah, thank you, Henry, for the wonderful presentation. Now we open up the floor for questions. Any takers? If not, I guess I'll take one first. So I've been monitoring, I guess, Stocknet ecosystem growth, and I've seen people talking about you guys showing up the Kakarot ZK EVM wrote on top of Cairo, right? I would be a little bit curious as to for average developers, is it a better idea to like develop stuff on using Cairo like instead of Solidity onto the current standard, or should they wait for the Kakarot EVM codes to be implemented?
That's a great question. I think no, it all boils down to you. How able are you to wait? When do you want to deploy your application? There's this saying: "A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush," and here this very much applies. I mean, like, you can wait for ZK VMs, but there's no clear timeline as to when these will be available, Kakarot included. So if you want to build something now that is scalable on ZK rollups, then this is where you should go. You should start building in Cairo.
Sure.
I'll also say this. I think that when you look at other blockchains like Near or Solana or Tezos, the patterns are really different when you program in Solidity. Programming in Cairo is not that different. Like the state is the same. The transaction lifecycle is very similar. Like a lot of things are very similar in both networks. So it's not really that complicated to switch from one to the other.
I've also heard good words from a lot of the developers and ecosystem partners. speaking very highly of how to develop on Cairo. I think I heard that from Guilty Joe, from Apology, and from a few others, still from Brick, etc. So definitely, thanks for the explanation. I guess we'll see anyone else want to ask a question. I guess we do have a relatively quiet crowd. Maybe, Henry, if you can bear with for a few minutes, and if there's still
No problem.
no questions, we'll end the session. And next one up in about 10 minutes is Luke from Web3MQ, who has been building a decentralized social messaging protocol. And I think it has already been introduced into the Loot Realm gaming world, where if you want to DM across the player across the game, you can do it via Web3MQ. So that actually fits our exact theme, a crossover between Web3 launching games and Web3 social. Oh, and if you can send the slides that you just presented into the workshop chat, that would be awesome. And
Sure, give
about
me a sec.
sure. And about the storage proof that you just talked about, I actually talked to the folks from Herodotus before, Casper and Marcelo, right? I asked them if they want to come to this one, and they said they were pretty busy with the Stackware session and preparing the product launch and stuff. So I guess still thank you too for I guess presenting instead of them.
Happy if this was useful.
北志诚和杨美玲遇害后，上级因事故处理了。
Need to mute someone.
在基地所有人眼中，
Wait, what else has been?
So where do you want me to post this? The slides?
I think you can do it in the general, or you can also do it in the workshop.
In general chat?
Workshop. Yeah, general chat works as well.
There you go. All right.
Great, I see it. And if there's no other questions, I guess we'll call it for this session. And
Wonderful.
looking forward to a wonderful hackathon for everyone.
Amazing. Okay, so I hope you all have a great time. I wish you the best for the hackathon, and let me know if I can help in any way.
Totally.
Wonderful. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.